This artwork was sold at an auction for $1.3 million US, but moments later, everyone was surprised to see that the painting of the girl and the balloon was being shredded before their eyes. Banksy, the infamous street artist behind this stunt, has been shrouded in mystery for his entire career, carefully leaving no trace of his identity. That is, until very recently. Today in this video, I'll be sharing with you how the most infamous street artist in the world finally got caught. His street art has captivated the world since 1999, but his identity, it's always remained a mystery. However, on the morning of September 18th, 2000, something happened that changed everything. And not until recently did all the pieces of the puzzle start finally coming together. In the early hours of the morning, police arrested a man on the roof of 675 Hudson Street, Manhattan. They caught him vandalizing a large Marc Jacobs billboard. He had painted goofy teeth and a giant speech bubble on the model. But before he could finish, Banksy was apprehended by the officers. What the officers didn't realize at the time was that they had just arrested the man who would go on to become the most infamous street artist in the world, the anonymous street artist whose work would later cause so much controversy. And what Banksy didn't realize at the time was that this would become the biggest mistake of his career, because he had left behind a crucial piece of evidence: his signature. 26 years later, the mystery has finally been solved. So, who is Banksy? Banksy's story begins in Bristol in the early 1990s, where he was a part of the city's underground graffiti scene. At first, he worked freehand, but after several close calls with the police, he switched to stenciling. Stenciling allowed him to work faster, with more precision, creating bold, instantly recognizable images that could appear overnight and disappear just as quickly. One of his earliest major artworks appeared in 1999 in Bristol. It was titled The Mild Mild West. The mural depicted a teddy bear throwing a Molotov cocktail at a line of riot police. The image was absurd and yet political at the same time, setting the tone for what Banksy would become known for, mixing humor with protest and challenging authority with striking visuals. As Banksy's style developed, he became known for combining bold stencil images with short, sharp messages like "One Nation under CCTV" and "If graffiti changed anything, it would be illegal." His work often featured reoccurring subjects: rats, policemen, soldiers, children, placed in ironic or unsettling situations, to the effect of critiquing war, consumerism, and power. Around the early 2000s, Banksy brought his work indoors. In 2003, his Turf War exhibition in London sparked controversy after he painted directly onto live farm animals. Despite authorities confirming that he had used non-toxic paint and that the animals weren't harmed, the display caused outrage. But controversy was often part of Banksy's strategy. In 2004, Banksy created one of the images that would later become his most recognizable: Girl with Balloon. The simple stencil of a child reaching toward a drifting heart-shaped balloon quickly became one of the most iconic pieces of street art in the world. In 2005, Banksy brought his work to the West Bank barrier, where he painted a series of murals that appeared to break open the concrete surface and reveal peaceful landscapes beyond. The images quickly spread around the world and showed that Banksy was willing to take his work directly into some of the most politically sensitive places on the planet. But as his message spread, so did his fame. And by the late 2000s, Banksy had become a major figure in the art world, something he openly mocked. And after one auction in 2007, where several of his works sold for record prices, he posted an image on his website with this message: "I can't believe you morons actually buy this shit." By the 2010s, Banksy was a global phenomenon. In 2010, his documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop premiered at Sundance and was later nominated for an Oscar, while Time magazine named him in their top 100 most influential people. He appeared fittingly with a paper bag over his head. But even as his fame grew, his work remained anti-authoritarian and political. In 2015, Banksy released his Gaza project. He used ruined buildings and haunting images to draw attention to the destruction there. Then came one of the most famous moments of his entire career. In 2018, just after a framed version of Girl with Balloon sold at auction, the artwork began shredding itself inside the frame. Banksy renamed it "Love is in the Bin," turning the sale into a performance piece and mocking the very market that made him millions. By this point, Banksy had evolved far beyond the underground Bristol scene. His works were selling for millions of dollars, appearing in museums, auction houses, and war zones. And yet, despite all of this, one thing never changed: Still, no one knew who he was. But over the years, a few clues began to surface. Some people believe that Banksy isn't a single person at all, but rather a collective of artists working together behind one name. According to this theory, it would be nearly impossible for one individual to create so many artworks, installations, and public stunts around the world for decades without eventually being exposed. Supporters of this idea argue that presenting Banksy as one mysterious artist could simply be a way to mislead the public while multiple people worked behind the scenes. Whilst this is a reasonable theory, there are several reasons why many doubt this explanation. Over the years, people who worked closely with Banksy, including former collaborators and managers, have consistently described him as a single individual. The style of artwork has also remained remarkably consistent, suggesting a single creative voice rather than a rotating group of artists. And while he may rely on assistants to help with logistics or installations, most evidence still points to Banksy being one artist and not a collective. So if Banksy really is a single person, the obvious question still lies: who is Banksy? One of the more unexpected claims appeared in 2020, when social media suggested that Neil Buchanan, a former British children's television presenter best known for Art Attack, was secretly Banksy. The rumor spread fast, built on the coincidence that Banksy artworks had reportedly appeared in cities where Buchanan's former band had performed, but the theory didn't last long. Buchanan quickly addressed the rumors, stating clearly that he was not Banksy. The theory died almost as fast as it started, and in the end, the viral theory turned out to be little more than an internet rumor. But other ideas about Banksy's identity began to attract more serious attention. One of these involved Thierry Guetta, a street artist known as Mr. Brainwash. Guetta appeared in Banksy's 2010 documentary, Exit Through the Gift Shop, which Banksy himself directed. The film follows Guetta's obsession with documenting street artists until he became one himself. Banksy does appear in the film, but in typical fashion, his identity remains hidden. He's shown dressed entirely in black, filmed as a silhouette, with his voice electronically altered. But many viewers never quite believed the story. The whole thing felt too absurd, too convenient. Some critics believe that the entire film might actually be an elaborate prank orchestrated by Banksy, with Guetta simply playing a decoy. If so, could Thierry Guetta actually be Banksy, hiding in plain sight in his own film? It was an entertaining idea, but Guetta is French, and Banksy has repeatedly said that he's from Bristol. And perhaps more importantly, Mr. Brainwash's artwork is entirely different from Banksy's. Unless Banksy is playing an extremely long and complex prank, this theory seems unlikely. But as for the next man, well, he might just be Banksy. Robert 3D Del Nair is a founding member of an electronic band called Massive Attack, a British group formed in 1988 in Bristol, the same city Banksy is believed to be from. Del Nair is specifically interesting because before turning to music, he was already known in Bristol's graffiti scene, and as a teenager, he was part of a graffiti collective called the Wild Bunch, and he built a reputation as a street artist before eventually shifting his focus to music. So the question that naturally follows is, did he really leave the world of graffiti behind? As Massive Attack toured internationally, some people noticed a strange pattern. In several cases, new Banksy artworks appeared in cities shortly after Massive Attack had performed. One journalist in particular, Craig Williams, pointed out a number of these coincidences. For example, Massive Attack performed in San Francisco in April 2010, and within days, several new Banksy murals appeared in that city. Shortly afterward, the band played in Toronto, where new Banksy pieces were also discovered. And when Massive Attack performed at the Hollywood Bowl in 2006, Banksy's famous Barely Legal exhibition opened just a week later in Los Angeles. These overlapping timelines led some people to believe that Del Nair might secretly be Banksy. The theory gained even more attention after English DJ Goldie appeared to slip up during a radio interview, casually referring to Banksy as Rob. Was this really a slip-up, or could it be that Robert Del Nair was Banksy? Well, the international news organization Reuters decided to find out, and they conducted an investigation. They started with a tip from Ukraine. In late 2022, an ambulance pulled up to a bombed-out building in the village of Horenka, just outside Kiev. Two people stepped out. One wore a grey hoodie, another a baseball cap, but both had their faces hidden by masks. The men carried cardboard stencils from the ambulance and taped them to what once had been an interior wall of an apartment building before it was destroyed by Russian shelling. Then they pulled out cans of spray paint and got to work. Within minutes, an absurd image had appeared in the middle of the wreckage. A bearded man sitting in a bathtub, calmly scrubbing his back. The creator of the mural was Banksy. Not long after the murals appeared, Banksy posted a video on Instagram confirming that the works were his. In the footage, a painter wearing a grey hoodie can be seen working in Harenka, but the video was filmed from behind him, carefully hiding his face. So Reuters reported traveled to the village to see if anybody had gotten a better look. One resident told the reporters that she had actually made coffee for the two men. She said she had briefly seen them without their masks. So the journalist showed her a couple of pictures of suspected Banksy identities. But as she looked through the photos, she shook her head again and again until one picture appeared. Her eyes widened. The man in the picture was Robert 3D Delnaya. Reuters got in touch with the immigration center from Ukraine and confirmed that Delnaya had entered from Poland on October 28, 2022, just days before the murals appeared. For a moment, it looked like the mystery might finally have been solved. The pieces seemed to fit, but Reuters kept pulling that thread and something didn't line up, because buried in a set of 26-year-old police documents from New York City was a signature, and that signature wasn't Robert Delnaya's. The signature dated back to September 2000 during New York's Fashion Week. Everything started after gallerist Ivy Brown complained about a large Marc Jacobs advertisement dominating the side of her building. She hated the way it looked and wanted something else. Banksy, listening to her, took the idea seriously. For several days, he reportedly sat in a bar across the street, staring at the advertisement and planning exactly what to do. That kind of target made perfect sense for him. Banksy had long argued that the billboards were no different from graffiti, public images forced onto people without their consent. And as he later wrote, any advert in a public space that gives you no choice whether you see it or not is yours to take, rearrange, and reuse. So that's exactly what he did. At the time, Banksy was in the middle of shifting from freehand to stenciling, but for this piece, he painted freehand. The half-finished result was said to resemble a scene from Jaws, but before he could finish the job, the police had arrested him. They estimated that the damage was over $1,500, so authorities initially pushed for a felony charge. Court and police records show that the man arrested that night even gave a handwritten confession. Within hours, he was assigned a public defender, and he was released after temporarily surrendering his passport. Later, the felony was reduced to a misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge. Banksy paid the fine, posted bail, and completed 5 days of community service. At the time, none of this seemed especially important. To New York police, this was just another vandal caught in the act. Banksy wasn't yet the international figure he would go on to become. But looking back now, this arrest may have been the biggest mistake of his career, because buried in those documents was something incredibly revealing, a signature, but not from Robert 3D Delnaya. The man who signed and confessed went by the name Robin Gunningham. For years, the name went largely unnoticed, but in 2008, journalists from the Mail on Sunday revisited the case and connected the dots. Their investigation argued that the man behind Banksy was indeed Robin Gunningham, a former Bristol resident whose background matched many details about the artist's early life. But the trail had actually started in 2004. Banksy's anonymity nearly collapsed after a falling out with Jamaican photographer Peter Dean Ricketts. The two had been working together in Kingston while Banksy was producing artwork for the record label Wall of Sound. After their collaboration went sour, Ricketts publicly criticized Banksy online and posted a series of photographs showing the artist at work. Several of the images clearly showed the man's face, and one of the photographs was even published by the Evening Standard under the headline, "Unmasked at Last." Still, the story never fully stuck. Banksy's manager at the time, Steve Lazaridis, quickly denied that the man in the photo was the artist. Lazaridis claimed that it was someone else. But when journalists later compared these photographs with other images and footage from Banksy from the same period, the similarities were difficult to ignore. The same facial features appeared, distinctive details, glasses, an earring in his left ear, and a tattoo on his forearm. All signs pointed to the same person. The name Robin Gunningham was starting to fit. But then, something strange happened. When investigative journalists from Reuters went to check if Robin Gunningham was the other man that crossed the border that day with 3D Delnaya, they found that there was no record of anyone with that name entering Ukraine. In fact, the deeper they looked, the stranger it became. After the 2008 investigation that first linked Banksy to Robin Gunningham, public records connected to that name seemed to disappear. It was as if Robin Gunningham had simply vanished. But the journalists had a theory. What if the name no longer existed? Former Banksy manager Steve Steve Lazaridis later suggested exactly that. According to him, the name Robin Gunningham had effectively been retired. "There is no Robin Gunningham. The name you've got, I killed years ago," Lazaridis said to Reuters. And after parting ways with Banksy in 2008, Lazaridis finally admitted that he had arranged a legal name change for the artist, giving him a completely new identity that could not be easily tracked to his past. But nothing stays hidden forever, and Reuters found out what they believed to be the name connected to Banksy. It was a name so common that it could easily disappear in plain sight. The name was David Jones. Immigration records showed that a man named David Jones had crossed into Ukraine on October 28th, 2022, the same day that Robert 3D Del Naya had entered the country. And strikingly, the two men reportedly had also left on the same day as well. The birth date listed on the passport also matched that of Robin Gunningham, and taken together, the pieces of the puzzle finally began to align. After decades of speculation, the identity of Banksy appeared to have finally been revealed. Robin Gunningham, now living under the name David Jones, is the identity of the most infamous street artist the world has ever seen. Some will argue that the mystery was always part of the art, and that by revealing the person behind it, it somehow diminishes the magic. Maybe. Tell me what you think in the comment section, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.